Hello, hello. Welcome to the Video Insiders podcast. This is Carlos Pacheco. Oh, wait, it's only Carlos Pacheco. Nothing too dramatic. Tom is very busy, and we wanted to record this podcast with Jonathan Weilbaecher from Little Monster Media. He is the SVP of Strategy and Audience Development, and he's got a hell of a lot of experience in the space. He's been at many YouTube-centric companies, very similar to Tom and I in terms of experience, almost 10 years of experience in the space. And we have an amazing conversation about what's happening on YouTube right now, Shorts, what's happening with Shorts, and Jonathan's predictions for the rest of the year, what's going to happen in 2021. So welcome to the show, and let's get to it. And we're back. This time, I'm welcoming Jonathan Weilbaecher from Little Monster Media. Jonathan and I have not had the pleasure of knowing each other, but I've always been a fan of what Little Monster has been doing since the start. I remember very specifically 5 years ago seeing the news about Matt starting Little Monster at a job I was and saying, we should be doing this. So I'm definitely a fan of the company and what you guys do. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. Honestly, you have some serious cred, but I've never heard of you. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean maybe, I know there's a lot of people I've never sort of learned about it. Every time I see people that I've new connections, I realize, holy crap, they know all the same people I know. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's totally how this world works too. It's small. It seems like everyone knows everybody, but then you just lift up a rock and you're like, oh wait, there's this other group of people that are only like two friends removed from you that have been doing this for their entire career and are also really cool and interesting to talk to. So it's always fun when we can mix it up and connect and discover all these different sides of the industry. But I've been in the space for over a decade now, working in some sort of professional capacity in online video since about 2008-ish. And then back in 2010, started professionally making YouTube-specific content. And really it started there. It was a company where we did video game videos, and there was like 20 of us, and we were all basically kids. I think I was among the elder statesmen at like 23, 24 in this group. And no one really knew any better, but we were making how-to video games on YouTube. And there were some really talented people, some of which are still immensely popular video game creators to this day. And I just sort of looked around the room and said, this is not a bunch of people that I want to compete with. I want to support these people. I want to help everyone understand how to generate viewership and generate audience, because that's the one thing that seemed to be the hardest to understand. So I spent my time and effort there focused on understanding the audience and how to generate viewership against ideas and how to study the analytics, limited as they were back in 2010. And then after a year working at that company, I took a little sabbatical hiatus from life. Spent about 6 months back in New Orleans just studying online video, web series, platforms, all of the above, as sort of my quote unquote bachelor's degree in online video, and then came back to LA ready to make this the career. Was able to get in at Maker Studios on their optimization team, which gave me an insight into the back end of some of the biggest creators on the platform at that time. And I was, just soaking up all the information, looking at the likes of Ray William Johnson, who was #1 on the platform at the time, watching the rise of PewDiePie before he was able to take it over to #1, and a bunch of other really cool creators who had some interesting back-end analytics. And so for a while, I was studying the back end of some of the top channels for what I considered sort of my master's degree in the YouTube space, and that's. Once I felt comfortable there, I went over to Collective Digital Studio, which is now known as Studio 71, where I was able to build a team for them to help the creators underneath that umbrella be better on the platform, then eventually take that knowledge that we learned and cross over into more traditional entertainment entities and major brands and help them be better on the platform. We were able to win the business to do the first year of The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon when he transitioned from his later program to the actual Tonight Show. We did the first year's strategy on developing their YouTube, and we targeted it would take him 2 years to become number one amongst his peers, and we were able to do that in 9 months because we were really focused on tactics, strategy, optimization that were endemic and native to the platform. The same stuff that we would give advice-wise to Epic Mealtime or Rhett and Link, we were giving to the Fallon crew, and they were receptive enough to do enough changes that it not only worked, it worked really well, and it became a lot of the status quo for how a lot of the late night teams tackle digital media even to this day. And so that was a really great sort of nexus point for me, where I've been now on both sides, the native traditional influencers and the large scale legacy entertainment companies. And I noticed and recognized that the core for both of these, if they want to build audiences on YouTube, are really much the same. And the reality is that we're not talking about two drastically different thought processes that, one might be favored over the other in the grand scheme of the algorithm. The reality is everyone just has their own specifics, their own realities that you have to adjust for and adapt to. But if you think about it in the same way for both, you're going to have the most total success. So that's what really sort of defined my perspective on audience growth in YouTube strategy, and really all digital media strategy is, come at it from the native platform perspective, but then embrace what is unique and special about you without treating it as separate from what's unique and special about everyone else. And so from there, the MCN game was sort of crumbling all around, and no one really wanted to continue to be in that sort of world. So I jumped ship over to a comedy collective called Jash, which was founded by Sarah Silverman, Reggie Watts, Tim and Eric, and Michael Cera, and did some really cool work in the comedy space for a couple of years. That group got bought up by Group 9 Media, which is a digital publisher, best known for The Dodo, Now This, Thrillist, Seeker, and recently Pop Sugar. Basically a collaboration of really big brands, with a lot of emphasis on Facebook, but on really all digital platforms. And I was able to see it from what was now a third point of view, the publisher's point of view, people who are professionals, but don't have the scale of the pop culture zeitgeist that comes with being a big major entertainment entity. So they had to be scrappy like an independent creator, but there were budgets and there were red tapes and there were realities associated with them being a publisher. And it just really codified and underlined for me the value of the perspective of being endemic to the platform, but really by this point in time understanding why of the platform. Like, what does the platform want? And it's going to want the same thing no matter who you are, what kind of content that you're putting out there. So if you can understand the why for what the algorithm's doing, for what the audience behavior is all about, you're going to be able to pull out the best strategies. And so spent a couple of years at Group 9, got my fill of the publisher world, and that's when I joined Matt Gielen over at Little Monster Media. Matt's been somebody I've known in the industry for a long time. I've been following with his work and friends with him since the Frederator days, and then after when he started Little Monster, definitely something that's similar to you, Carlos. I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting, smart thing to go start and do. Little did I know a few years later that I would be joining that team. And it's been great. I've been there for basically like 2 months before the lockdown started. So a year and 3 or 4 months. It's kind of nuts, but it's been great. And what I love about it is it's an opportunity to work with a lot of very eclectic, different types of channels and creators and individuals and companies, and really focus down on helping people be better on the platform. Some people want to really understand it and want to make their own strategies, but they want our sort of support in helping validate and showcase where they might be going off the rails. Other people just want to hand us the keys and let us do all the work. And what's really interesting and fun about it is going through and finding the unique ways to provide the most value to all of these partners and build the biggest audiences. So it's been a lot of fun and really something I look forward to continuing to sort of do as we move out of this sort of pandemic zone. And we can get back into a world of, events and conferences and other stuff like that. So we can, get back in the sort of collaborative vibe that's really the hallmark of what makes this business a lot of fun to be a part of.
Yeah, I have to admit the last year has definitely cut back in the collaborative side of things. That's like an impressive sort of rundown of your career. And I see a lot of similarities in yours and mine, in terms of like seeing, the landscape from different perspectives. Mine's slightly different in terms of I spent a lot of years in the world of marketing, buying media. So I definitely, when I came to the world of content, I was like, I knew what where the money was, in a way, where the money was coming from more than, a little bit more in detail. And I also understood what, a media buyer is thinking about when he's reaching out to a creator. So that was sort of like an interesting perspective. And, to be honest, as myself, as somebody who spent many years in advertising, one of the things they never teach you is how to build an audience. And they don't teach you as well. They don't, you don't learn about audience development. You don't learn about the business models that keeps creators and media alive. You just care about the money you're trying to spend for the client and get more of that. So that's sort of like a different perspective that I often come at when talking to anybody in the industry. And a lot of companies, sort of, again, like the Maker Studios, the Collective, these are all companies I've had interactions with in the past. And I'm pretty sure we walked across each other in certain, without knowing in the past in different conferences or even at your offices, because those are the offices I remember visiting a few years back. So it's very cool that, you've ended up at, you're currently at Little Monster. We've got a lot of experience between you and me. Like we're basically the same amount of years working in the industry. I want to hear your perspective on what's happening with YouTube. Like, we're focusing on YouTube. YouTube is always sort of like I always feel like every 3 months, we don't like things are just like completely changed. Something new's happening and we need to think differently in terms of our content. But at the same time, I work with clients where slow and steady, wins the race. They just don't need to change too much. Whereas other creators need to be like on the pulse of what's happening on a platform. What are your thoughts on how, the platforms evolved over the last, I don't know, I don't want to say a specific amount of time, but I would say the last couple of years, it feels like there's a lot of like evolution on the platform. We're now, I want to bring up the question of shorts later, but like, no, shorts is a thing now. But, anyways, I'll shut up. I just want to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really insane how much the platform changes and evolves and goes through different iterations of what matters, what's the most important. But at the end of the day, I think there's one core piece of commonality that always matters most, and it's the more you can entertain an audience, the more that you can engage an audience and make them want to come back to you or want to continue to click on your content, you're probably going to be successful. Things that are trends, things that kind of ebb and flow, like, certain video games that gamers play, or certain formats, or things like, pranks used to be the most important thing in the world on YouTube, and thankfully we've moved past that. But the reality is, and evolution is very much the right word, a lot of the mindset and creative force that went behind some of the really big prank videos and what was inspired by those prank videos have really kind of turned into a lot of the stuff that's really popular today. The Mr. Beasts of the world, the idea that that this content, the value proposition of that content is that moment of surprise, shock, awe, joy when you hand someone over a bunch of money. Like, if you trek that backwards, you go to people who were, walking around handing homeless people $100 and filming, and that was really icky because it was a part of that social experiment iteration, which was a way for prank people to feel like they were elevating themselves. And then it goes back to pranks, and then it goes back to like prank phone calls and trolling, and it always iterates, and it always grows, and always moves in and out of style and fashion. And what I love about being on YouTube and having experienced so much time on the platform is really watching the different large scale trends as they've come and go. I remember when family vlogging and mom's content was not just healthy, but like you could make a real business out of it. And there's still some people that do, but it's not quite the same as where everyone and their mother had 7-day a week family vlogs, or the collaboration of 6 or 7 of these channels will bring their moms or their dads together, and it's like a daddy channel now, and it's using a lot of the same elements of collaboration and audience mobility, but for an audience vertical that you wouldn't think to try to put 2 and 2 together. So for me, it's watching these mechanics at play over long periods of time. And while surface level they might seem very different, when you really break it down, the mechanics are often the same. Like if you studied anyone that spent time as the most subscribed channel, and you watch them over time, you see a lot of the same kind of things that support the current most popular channels, and the reality is those people are going to trend downwards in terms of viewership, and something else is going to come up and take its place. And I think that's another part of it too is the consistent lack of inconsistency, or the only thing that is permanent is the concept of impermanence. There's nothing is like, if you don't like how the platform is at any given time, hold your breath and wait 10 minutes, and you likely are going to be in a different zone. And people might be listening to this, or like when I go onto like Clubhouse and stuff like that, where you can end up talking to a lot of people that are maybe a lot more green in the space or younger in the space. They look at the people who are the most successful, or the people that are at the top of the niches and the verticals that they adhere to and aspire to be a part of. And it feels like that's like a Mount Rushmore, or the most important thing in the world. But the longer you're in these platforms, the more and more you realize that they're just moments of time, and that to get the most out of it at any given time, from like a studying and self benefit point of view, is just simply learning to answer the question why. Why is this person popular? Why are people watching this content? And oftentimes, that answer isn't going to be like super simple and the kind of thing you can do on a multiple choice. Like, it's more of a long form essay that you hated when your teachers assigned in high school. But answering that for yourself is going to be the key towards figuring out not just how to ride that momentum better, but also will allow you to retain parts of what makes it work once the larger spectrum of that vertical, that niche, that trend, or that individual creator are sort of past their prime, and the next big thing has come up to sort of wow the audiences and the people along the way.
Yeah, that's definitely what the platform has been over the last couple of years. And I feel like I wanted to sort of bring out the conversation about like algorithm. That's constantly the question that everybody's asking all the time. And I think in 2020, we were talking about, audience satisfaction essentially was this sort of thing that YouTube created that, was a mishmash of all the metrics together and saying like, are people watching because they like your content, or are they, watching it, again, it was never sort of a defined metric. But it was the way we saw it. When I say we, as me and Tom, we sort of saw it as a combination of a bunch of metrics that would, signal to YouTube as like that, your content is worth watching and they'll recommend it more. Do you feel like that's still the priority with the platform?
I mean, in generalities, yeah, absolutely. Audience satisfaction is, the principal guiding point for what the algorithm does. And the reality is, though, like it's crazy to think about how far the platform has sort of gone. Every time they've iterated on an algorithm, it's been about, how do we make the platform better for the users? And it's gone from, a focus on, YouTube being the second largest search engine on the planet, and we're going to make it the best possible search engine. So no matter what, you're putting into it, you're going to get something out of it that you love. And then over time you realize, okay, this is a really gameable system and it's not actually giving us the best. So then we're going to put an algorithm around popularity and put that stuff on a homepage. And then, you look up after 6 months, and if YouTube doesn't manually remove a bunch of videos, the whole homepage would just be Minecraft, because the way that the different verticals work is that some work better for whatever factors that are playing into whatever algorithm is at the time. So then as they continue to get more and more sophisticated, it becomes less about the triggers and the elements that a creator can put into it, and it becomes more about audience behavior. And what's so great about that, and I love that that's where we are now with the platform, is that it forces you to be better algorithmically by thinking about things outside of yourself. The algorithm doesn't serve the creators of the content, it serves the watchers of the content. And so when you're thinking about what I should be doing from like an optimization standpoint or a packaging standpoint, there isn't a like, here is the right way to do it. Here's X, Y, and Z, go. And what I love about that, even though it makes my job infinitely harder to not just have an easy answer to give to all the clients that come by, but it allows for and really embraces the idea of the unique individuality of the specific context of every creator. Every creator has their own unique fingerprint in terms of how they're interacting with the platform, whether it's, their editing style or their tone of voice or their community management skills, or outside of platform stuff like their access, their friends. Do they have the ability to create content regularly or not? Like, everyone has their own reality that, there's maybe like 100 questions and you answer it your own way, and no one has exactly the same answer sheet at the end of the day. And what's so exciting about that is it means that working on building an audience through the algorithm is less about here's the right way to do it, and more about here are 1,000 levers. We're going to start pulling the ones that we think matter the most based on your context, your reality, and your goals. And then every time we pull a lever, it gives us new information, and then we have to kind of think about it all over again. And the opportunities that I get to have, where we have partners who give us a lot of leeway and control in terms of how we're thinking about the strategic approach to their channels and their content, are always the ones that are the most fulfilling, because we can try to have a deeper understanding of what it is that the output is. And then the more we can understand the output, the better we're going to be able to guide sort of how we get input, and that input is audience and viewership. So I'm really excited about where the platforms are currently algorithmically, because there's just such a dense menagerie of different equations and thought processes and algorithms that go into all of these different decision-making things, and we sit on the other side of that, looking at results and trying to figure out the best way to do it. And at the end of the day, when you figure it out, what's exciting about that is we didn't just figure out how to beat a machine. We figured out how to really reach and talk to other human beings. And that is the coolest thing about audience development, particularly on platforms like this. Like, it isn't about pulling eyeballs and just getting, a big number against, a video window. Like, one of the things I hated about Facebook audience development is the focus on Facebook is how many people can you get to watch the first 5 seconds of the video with no sound on? To me, those weren't views. That was barely better than impressions. But the problem is they counted as such, and so many of the strategies were built around building that up. You don't understand anything about your audience. You don't build a relationship or a connection with your audience by having somebody look at something for 5 seconds with no sound on. But on YouTube, if you can find out that, okay, the audience behavior dictates that most of your audience is watching from this traffic source in this way, and that if you can increase your impressions by doing this amount of community management and change and tweak your metadata so you can get slightly better performance on search, we do all these little levers, and then we start to see more traffic coming in from search, and then that audience brings a different kind of connotation to the conversation in our community management, which then increases our opportunity to generate impressions, which then at the end of the day builds better views. Like, understanding and knowing how to do that and working through that is an exercise in tracking and understanding and then eventually guiding audience behavior, human being decision making on a really deep and direct level. And I think that's what sort of keeps me going, keeps the juices flowing, a decade into this, while it gets harder and harder every day to be able to know with just a series of best practices in the back of your head how to do good on this platform. But that challenge keeps it fresh and keeps it exciting, and the rewards for turning a corner on a channel that maybe has been declining in viewership for 3 years, and you're able to turn them around because you've reached their audience in a slightly different way, but a way that's more engaging, and so then the algorithm wants to put it in front of another million people. Those are the kind of things that have been amongst the most rewarding in my career, because it's truly earned, and it's earned at a pace where the other end of the spectrum weren't duped into it. They've expressed positivity in their behavior, which just creates a healthier interaction and environment for the creator and that audience and the platform, sort of overall.
Wow. You've said a lot of stuff I've agreed on. What I really enjoyed is how you described the Facebook stuff, because that was the bane of my existence, of people trying to get things going on Facebook, or why things are going or not doing on Facebook. And I hated how Facebook measured its views and all that sort of stuff. But you said it in a much more sort of eloquent way. The algorithm has evolved, and the audience has evolved. I'm constantly amazed at the different audiences I'm seeing across different channels, because I too had many, many clients. I'll fully admit, when I saw Little Monster launch, I was like, I need to do that in Canada. And right now I'm doing it, but more as a one-man show, because I'm just hard-headed in that perspective. One of the things that I wanted to sort of discuss is what's happening right now versus the algorithm, because we're talking about quality and how we're making sure that we're reaching the audience the way it wants to reach, and essentially everything you said is basically on point. The one sort of spanner in the works that I'm seeing these days is shorts. Because from my experience, it doesn't behave the same way as the algorithm does. And there's not a lot of thought process going through the content. It can be the most randomest thing in the world. And I'll give you my impression of it. When I look at shorts and I look at the content going quote unquote viral on it, it feels like YouTube 2005. It feels like the original YouTube, I'm at the zoo, random video, hey, you got to watch this type of video. And then, it goes viral. And that's my impression. And I don't have a lot of experience with shorts right now. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on how it's going. Is it just like a crapshoot right now, or is there sort of like a bigger algo per play the same way as TikTok? Like you're not even logged in and it knows what you should be watching. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, I'm not expecting you to have the answer, but I was just like, I want to talk about it.
For sure. No, I mean, this is, anytime there's a sort of a new format on a platform like YouTube, it's intensely interesting to watch and see and understand. And, if YouTube is supporting it heavy, then, it behooves everyone to, if they're not on the new tool immediately, then at least be studying it, watching it, monitoring it, and figuring out the right way for them to take advantage of it as it matures. I will say what's interesting, and I love how we segued into this by also you calling out the Facebook side of it, is, it kind of goes back to short form video as a whole. So, I mean, TikTok right now is the sort of grand dragon of all of them. But the reality is it's been Vine, it's been Snapchat, it's been Musical.ly, which is the literal precursor to TikTok, and a lot of other activations along the way. And the reality is that the structure of the short form video is much more akin to what Facebook was doing in terms of generating viewership and generating audience, in as much as it's okay, we're going to have a feed type situation, or it's going to be a situation that's not about you searching stuff out per se, but about us just giving you stuff, and it's going to be bite size, easy to understand, easily swiped through, and then your experience is about the overall moment or time that you're on the platform, not necessarily the specific videos they're in. And what's interesting about that, I think that's really, really an interesting perspective to have. It's very different than an on-demand video strategy and plan and ecosystem. And so one of the things that people talk about that I like to always sort of like, oh, well, however, let me tell you this, insert myself into the conversation, is TikTok is no more the next big thing, or no more a direct competitor to YouTube or Netflix or Disney, that Twitter was a direct competitor to J.K. Rowling. It's a completely different form. And what it is, it's a new language that's utilizing the same structure of, in this case, video and audio video connectivity, and it's presenting it in a form that is new and fresh and exciting, and it's valid. And I don't want anyone to think that that I'm dismissing short form video and saying this, but what I'm saying is it's a new language for us to learn and understand. And they're part of the reason why a lot of the younger generation takes so much to this, and why it's always seemingly a younger generation that spearheads adaptation of new formats and ideations like this, is because it's easier to be fluent when you're born into it. And so, a kid today who's got, his first cell phone or his first iPad, and, what him and his friends are interested in connecting on, TikTok's going to be the top of that list for them, because that's part of the cultural zeitgeist of who they are at their age, at their time, and the rest of their generation and the generations ahead of them. And so when they get on board with it, they don't have to bust through any preconceived notions. They just see it for what it is, and then they can start to iterate on it cleanly, simply, and efficiently. And that's what helps build all of this really interesting, really experimental and avant-garde content through that. So what I love about what YouTube is doing with shorts and taking that sort of structure is it's basically just bringing that new language of video to YouTube, and you basically making this claim that if YouTube is going to be a repository for the entire spectrum of the video experience, I mean, you can watch feature-length films, you can watch VR stuff, you can watch even some interactive stuff, literally anything that is a video-centric expression of an idea, you can find a version of it on YouTube. So naturally, if this new language of video is going to become a prevalent part of a burgeoning generation, then yes, let's bring that to YouTube as well. And because it is brand new and because it is such a different style of delivery, like you can't just bring in shorts wholesale and put them in a video on demand situation like a regular channel, because that's not the point of them. The point of them isn't like, oh, look at my short videos. It's, hey, I'm going to scroll through a bunch of shorts and like what's going to catch my attention, what's going to send me down a rabbit hole. And if you're exceptionally good at what you do, then someone's going to follow you so they can keep seeing your content either directly by searching for or in their sort of generated feed. And that's where we get, I think, to the answer to your question, which is how is YouTube handling it from, like a discoverability and an algorithmic perspective. And to a small extent, they're handling it as simply as possible. The algorithms that dictate the short shelf population are not nearly as sophisticated as the algorithms for regular video content. But they do exist. There is stuff on there that is making some back-end calculations to present stuff to you based on the information that it has and your profile. So it's not a complete shot in the dark, but it is much more based on the whims of the where the biggest audience is in terms of their behavior, and also the performance metrics of the stuff that works really, really well. And I think that as long as you're going to see a lot of these lifestyle channels, these vlog channels, some cooking channels have had incredible success. These places where, there are large, sticky, enthusiastic audiences, particularly those audiences that are likely, younger millennials or Gen Z, you're going to see an easier, quicker adaptation onto the shorts format on the platform, and necessarily more of that content's going to do better than, repurposing content from a channel that's been on YouTube for 10 years. Their audience, isn't the target audience for shorts. Their content wasn't conceived that way. And where I think there will be a future version of the shorts world that is going to be really open for everyone and give people who have built audiences over a long period of time an opportunity to succeed in that space. I think that right now it's much more of, I don't want to say a crapshoot because nothing truly is random, but there's a lot more ebb and flow based on unbalanced factors such as, the popularity of specific verticals, specific creators, and just the way that content plays next to each other. Those algorithms are just not sophisticated enough, so they have to lean on more overt and superficial connections like overall niches or similar talent or similar upload time or similar framing devices. Like it's going to be looking at stuff like that more and more than, oh, you just watched this really funny short that used Space Jam audio, and you liked it and watched it 3 times, so we're going to find other things that have Space Jam. Like, we're not there yet. So, like, we're not able to sort of, like, push through in a lot of the same ways that TikTok has got an incredibly sophisticated algorithm that can continue that conversation over and over again. YouTube's going to be a little more dependent on the ebb and flow of audience movement and behavior, which is unfortunately a little too dictated by also just the general demographics of who's popular and who has the best opportunity to move audiences from one piece of content to the next.
It's definitely an exciting sort of time. We've been here in the business for like 10 years. Yes, it keeps changing, but sometimes it just feels a little bit repetitive. And I would say that shorts for me feels like, oh, this is something that is not as easily, it's much more of a sandbox than anything else, and everybody's trying to figure it out. And even though like the format is not new, the early Viners are probably the ones that are, the Viners that kept going are probably the ones that, really get it. And as you said, the younger generation that understand how to create that content are going to do extremely well. And exactly like you said, like anybody who's just repurposing content is just not going to hit anything that great or consistently as somebody who's, creating content on a specifically for that format. So completely agree on that side of things. But I love your perspective on how the algorithm, the difference is the algorithm, which is exactly sort of what I meant when I said like it feels like YouTube 2005. It's like the algorithm is just not as sophisticated. And another way I sort of see it as well is over the years, as YouTube sort of like forced a creator to create content that's more and more elaborate in a way, or more complicated. I don't want to elaborate. It's complicated. Same thing. I just mean like highly produced content. It feels like it created this gap of like lesser produced content that's a little bit more on the fly, the vlogs that have sort of like disappeared over the years. And I feel like this also gives another opportunity for that format to sort of like find a new home as well. But that's my sort of like 10,000 feet perspective of how the platform is evolving.
Yeah, I mean, it's really astute in terms of the kind of content that works at an earlier point in the lifespan of a platform. When you kind of track things out, there's a lot of similarities there. I mean, like, to be completely frank, like, cat videos were at the start of literally every successful video platform, including film. Like Edison made cat videos, so it's like there's just some core things in just the reality of how humans interact. And when we have the opportunity to like have some video, like, yeah, there's going to be a lot more just like put your phone up and shoot it kind of stuff. And 5 years from now, the same people that just flipped their phone up and started shooting stuff are going to be the first ones to figure out how do you tell a compelling narrative drama utilizing the format. And that's going to come. And that's going to be so cool to see. But what's interesting too, and what I love about pointing out the vlog sort of style and how it shorts right now is eerily reminiscent of YouTube like 6-7 years ago, is part of what made those vlogs work. Is we always used to talk about, we still do to a degree, just in a different way, authenticity being one of the biggest and most important things in building an audience. And people used to think that authenticity meant, like, you just got to be raw and real, or you just got to be lo-fi, or it was never that. It was always about, you have to be able to authentically express an emotion. And yes, most people, the best way for them to authentically express an emotion is to authentically express that emotion. But, that's why like actors are good and talented, and why not everyone can do it, because part of the reason why what they do real well is authentically put that emotion into those performances, and it feels real when you watch it. And so you have that connection. And so, as more and more, people are, coming into the space, you can provide that authenticity while still having all the artifice of production value. And that's why you look at, the late night hosts, like the ones that really work and have the longevity of time, felt like a friend coming into your house at the end of every night to talk to you about the day's events. And that's a type of authenticity that is, not anyone can do. I mean, you
Trevor Noah.
100%. And like what he was able to bring to incredibly complex conversations, you felt like you were like having a conversation about it as opposed to being told it, which was really valuable, and part of the reason why he works very well on the YouTube platform. So knowing that authenticity isn't just about being quote unquote real, what I love looking at shorts today is it takes a lot of the same elements of those sort of free-form unscripted vlogs, but strips down to the most important part, which is what's the emotionality of the moment, of the content. Is it humorous? Is it shock and awe? Is it juxtaposition? Is it self-deprecation, or righteous anger? Like, there's all these different emotional touch points, and when you only have 60 seconds or less, it forces you to keep that emotionality front and center as the star of the show. And partially the reason why short form content, I think, is had so many iterations that have come and then failed, but then another version came back, is because there's something innately raw and watchable and vortexable, where you then watch 10 of them in a row, when you wear that emotionality authentically on your sleeve, and there's really nowhere else to wear that emotionality in 60 seconds. If it's funny cat videos, you got to get to that punchline, and is this cat going to do something dumb, something evil, something hilarious? And it's going to be one of those things, and once you understand what it is, which is usually the first couple seconds, you are now hooked to sort of watch it through, and you don't have to expend a lot of time and effort to watch it through. So you are more willing to commit to that process, and then rinse, repeat, and you look up from your phone and you've been looking at TikTok for an hour. And I think that's part of what's really cool about the short space right now, is watching people instinctively do that. Like, I don't believe like a lot of these people who are making super successful videos are thinking about the emotionality of their videos as they're in a writer's room trying to figure out the next 30 shorts that they're going to do this month.
Some of them are.
Some of them are. This is not making absolutes here, but what's cool to see is there are a lot of people that are becoming successful because they're finding ways to do it through just raw instinct and that fluency in this new language of video. That's just it's really inspiring to see, because it makes me want to get in there and strategize some short stuff. And I've been able to dabble with a couple channels, but really most of it's been repurposed, and it doesn't really work, as we've already discussed. So, how do we experiment, and how do we, cajole a creator that's been around since the pre-Maker days to get on board with creating social media shorts, in 2021. And that's part of the challenge of like what we do. And so it's knowing that this is now going to be a part of how we interact with talent and anyone that wants to build an audience and is searching for that expertise. It's like opening up a new chapter in a book that you've read 100 times, and you're realizing that there's a whole new chapter now that you get to read and study and digest and take in. It's cool and exciting, really all the time. And I think that's why YouTube never gets old, even though I'm getting older, and some of the creators are starting to get old.
Join the club, man.
It doesn't feel any less new and Wild West and exciting, and anything is possible now than it did in 2010, because as much as stuff has changed, as much as stuff has sophisticated and matured and become a business first and foremost, it still features that bleeding edge of the interaction between a storyteller, a content creator, and an audience member, a viewer. And as long as that bleeding edge is raw and new and experimental, which it necessarily should always be with a platform like YouTube, then there's always going to be something new and interesting and exciting to have this kind of conversation about. Really every couple of years something comes around, and it just re-enthuses the part of me that's like, all right, cool, let's figure this out, let's win this, let's make people connect with real audiences using these tools. And seeing how that works over time, and then once that feels comfortable and good, something new will happen, and something new will come around, and we'll get to sink our teeth into that.
Definitely, it's going to be. I'm still waiting for YouTube podcasts, because it's going to happen.
I mean, especially once it gets to the point where the video podcast becomes the more the norm to the audio podcast, then 100% you're right, because it's what we said earlier is YouTube is the repository for any type of visual medium, essentially. And so once something becomes the more important way to express in a medium, and it's visual and video based in its forefront, then absolutely, YouTube will come up with the podcast corner, and it'll be like subscriptions, and it'll easier to play without losing your spot kind of stuff, or maybe they'll introduce bookmarks, and maybe then audiobooks become a big thing. Like these are all these weird little corners that I'm sure someone working at YouTube is listening to this being like, that's my pet project, don't talk about it yet, I'm not announcing it for 2 years. But like it's what's cool is what reveals itself over time, and what we can then get excited about.
Yeah, considering how an amazing job Google has done at podcast support over the last many years, I won't hold my breath too long. I did, that one. This was an awesome conversation. Let's talk a little bit about Little Monster. Give me something that's like you guys are working on, other than like obviously managing client channels and all that sort of stuff. I know that's the bread and butter of the company, but recently, I don't remember what time, but you launched Monster Thumbnails. Was it last year?
Yeah, Monster Thumbnails launched sort of right at the top of 2020.
Yeah, and I've yet to try it, but I've had a couple of clients start asking me about thumbnails, and I'm, like I said, a one-man machine, so I can't, manage big channels with lots of thumbnail news. Tell me a little bit about what that does. What's the service?
Yeah, so Monster Thumbnails was an idea that Matt wanted to bring to bear for really exactly kind of what you were talking about in terms of, there's a lot of need in the space for people to execute on thumbnails, and we have the knowledge on what makes a good thumbnail. So what is the next iteration of that? And that's, let's do it for people. I think that the timing with the pandemic, is not wonderful. Starting something new in the beginning of 2020 is going to turn back as one of those just cosmic irony things when you're looking back at things. So it's something that our focus is a little less on that these days, and more about just because again, the core value of understanding stuff and how we can give people value is understanding why to do things. So we still do it, and if you go to our website, there's information against it. But we're trying to focus more on partnerships with people who want to sort of be better in a macro on the platform, and understand through production services, strategy services, channel management services, packaging services, like what are the ways that we can put something together for our partners that maximizes what value they can get out of it, and allows us to focus on the areas that can be most impactful. And when you focus on them that way, sort of by like effort type, then it also allow you to experiment more, or put forward ideas for experimentation that might be more easily executable, than if you were just sort of like, let's have a general strategy partnership with a thumbnails little sidebar, and like you can focus on that. But then it makes it more difficult if you want to say, well, what if you started to do compilations on your channel, and we have an idea for what might be able to generate more viewership for you. And we can have those conversations. But if we are already in a situation where we're doing production work for you, then it's an easier bridge to cross. So I think the core of that is we get the most valued success out of partnerships that are very specific to the needs of the client, and so I think that's where we're sort of at more of a focus. But I will say this about the Monster Thumbnails sort of initiative, is being able to work on a just crazy amount of thumbnails over the course of the time that we've been doing it, and seeing a lot of the differences between different verticals, different genres, different channel types, new channels, long-term channels, corporate channels, independent channels, really underlines and helps put the proper emphasis on the different elements of thumbnails that work. So it really makes us much more confident, and in my personal opinion, stronger in our strategic sort of perspective on how we package content, than we were if we weren't sort of doing that on the ground work. So it's really cool, and that's part of what I think I love most about Little Monster is when there's these sort of initiatives, they're not just ideas. If the right people in the company are like, okay, yeah, let's do that, or let's put this together, let's offer this as a service, we just do it. And we try it, and we find clients against it, and whether or not it becomes a long-standing, long-term thing that we do forever for always, or something that we, ramp up for a year and then sort of settle in on a set of clients and kind of just do it on the side there on out. Like that's not the victory there. The victory there is a greater institutional knowledge for how to be best at these different executions, and that's where I think Monster Thumbnails has been super valuable to the Little Monster experiences. We have strategists and channel managers and even like account managers now who have immense thumbnail experience, which just makes them better at talking about that with all of our other clients and all the other sort of project initiatives that we do moving forward.
Awesome. Yeah. The thumbnail situation, again, completely understanding the whole launching during the pretty much the onset of a pandemic, as my wife went through the same thing, as my wife is an entrepreneur and launched a project pretty much March 2020. So I totally understand the struggle over the last year, sort of like doing something new. But I think it's still a much needed service for quite a niche amount of clients, or any kind of, a lot of clients on YouTube, because it's a time suck for everybody, and every single time I've managed YouTube, channels for brands or creators, it's too much of a hard lift to get anything really, really done. So having an outside service that has that inherent knowledge is valuable. So I hope, you guys keep that going. Other than like being a complete, basically my enemy, you do essentially what I do, except in a much more sophisticated way. But all kidding aside, what are your thoughts for the rest of 2021? I mean, 2020 was a hard year to predict. Everybody was sort of like, views went up, views went down, whatever. Like again, I have an eclectic view of a bunch of channels, and I try not to take it all, say this is what's happening, but I'll give you my sort of like, tinfoil hat prediction. I think there's a little bit of a semi slowdown across the industry as everybody just wants to get the F out of staying home. And that's my sort of like grand, doesn't make any sense strategy, because I know there's other things happening. But is there anything that you're thinking like, this is, YouTube's going to just chug along and, things will be, we'll have the same conversation 2021 it's 2021 in 2022.
What are years? Yeah. No one knows anymore. I do totally think that 2021 is going to kind of be just like a, get back to normal kind of year, a little bit, especially with a lot of, like there's going to be a whole run over the next like 3 to 4 months of channels getting boosted, attention and viewership by simply being back in a studio. There's just very time-specific elements that we just have to naturally progress through that are going to kind of be specifically relevant, but not long-term relevant, that we're going to navigate through. But one prediction, and this is kind of going a little out of left field from, I think, exactly how you were asking, but it's just something that I feel very passionate, like we're on the doorsteps of, and I think that someone's going to do it. And since I don't work for a big major streaming corporation, I'm just going to say it out loud in as many public places as I can to hopefully inspire one of them to go and do it, because I just selfishly want to see it myself in action. But I think that there is just an absolute gold mine of content, of legacy library content that is associated with major important IPs that are the tent poles of a bunch of these streaming platforms. So like the example I always give, so why alter it now? HBO Max is part of Warner Brothers. Whoever their parent company is going to be in the next year, be damned. But there is they are Warner Brothers still, and one of the biggest pieces of IP that they own and operate is Harry Potter. And they have the 8-film Harry Potter series, the Fantastic Beasts stuff, and then not a ton of other ancillary stuff, but, that's where they're sort of sitting at. And HBO Max launches and, all the Harry Potter movies in one place was part of their sell. And then like a month later, Peacock ended up having contractual rights to play the Harry Potter movies. Mm-hmm. So it had to come off HBO Max. Mm-hmm. And so what became this sort of, celebrated like here, Harry Potter, this is its home, became a point of confusion, because shortly after that part of that campaign was run, it was no longer the home for it for at least like 2 years or something like that. But it also just sort of created a kind of a white space, this dead space on the platform where, when the Harry Potter movies are there, you can have a Wizarding World of Harry Potter section with all of these big premium important movies. And then when those movies are gone, there's just kind of nothing there. So what if, and again, not even an if, what when someone realizes that if a goal for a streamer is to keep people on the streaming platform and to watch as many minutes as possible and then to stay subscribed, these are the core raw back of napkin goals that like an HBO Max or Disney Plus is going to have. Subscribe, stay on, watch lots of things. The end. So if those are the goals, why not build a destination, a Wizarding World of Harry Potter destination that, yes, the movies will be the tentpole, but the individual assets that can fill it, and maybe it's 10 different ones that are rotated on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, go license, excellent fan-made content that utilizes that IP and put that on that service and celebrate that as here's the fan voice, or here's your perspective, or just here's some other cool pieces of content that you're going to like. And, maybe it's a video essay about how, Prisoner of Azkaban was, a defining pivot point for the whole franchise because of how it changed artistic direction. Or maybe it's a French horn solo cover of Hedwig's theme. This is a kind of weird, kooky stuff that's on YouTube.
I get what you're going with. Okay, yeah. It took me a while to sort of figuring out, but I was like, okay, I get it, because I would totally watch Lindsay Ellis do essay of each movie I watch after I watch, and if you can create a channel that mixes both your IP and user created content, but all within that same theme, I think that's an epic sort of opportunity. Yeah. Is that what you're trying to say here?
Pretty much, yeah. And the idea is create a feedback loop between the owners of the IP, the fans who are passionately creating this content, and the influencers in the middle who are both fan and content creator, and make it not a arm's length separate thing, but make it part of what it means to care about this IP and the experience of it. And so then what the owner of the IP will be doing is licensing content. So they're paying creators for their work, which is the holy grail of work for creators. If you can tell a content creator, here, there's 6 videos in your library that, Peacock would like to license from you for whatever that fee is, and they want to put it next to content like DreamWorks content on Peacock. That's content that's not generating any more revenue for that creator. That's, it's in the past. It's probably barely even generating views anymore. And so the fact that they're finally going to they would finally have an opportunity to earn some secondary, tertiary licensing revenue, which is how stuff it's the same real processes like Friends, however many millions of dollars or billions or whatever they paid for the exclusive license for Friends. Think about that, but obviously at a comparable scale. But if you were to go to a video essayist and put a package together to license a bunch of their old work to put it up against this content, so the creator is getting paid, the creator is getting exposure to new audience, the owner of the IP is getting a destination out of it, and they're getting a reason for people to be on the platform longer, even if they've lost the contract soundtrack to the principal IP. If you set up that Wizarding World and you didn't have Harry Potter for another year, you could still get people to click on that little corner of HBO Max if you're constantly updating it with this cool stuff like that. And then when it does come back, now everyone's going to celebrate that the Wizarding World is now complete, and you can kind of move forward with it from there. So, and then the audience is going to get the value, because if they've seen it on YouTube, you might not click that specific video, but if you're talking about a real eclectic amount of content that you're putting in there, it's very unlikely that anyone has seen all of it. So the audience is going to get exposed to new content creators who they can then go find and fall in love with in their native platform. So it's just one of those things where everyone can win, and when everyone can win, I think that it becomes a no-brainer, and I think it's something that I truly think we'll see someone figure out and crack the code of. I mean, we're already starting to see some signs of this. Disney licensed some movie theater reaction footage from Avengers Endgame to put in a major played in front of theaters trailer for the Marvel slate that's coming out over the next few years. You're seeing some streamers put special features in special like Zoom talking head interview sessions in adjacent to movies on the streaming platform. So I think that all these things are the early signs and portents that there can be that the movies and the TV shows could just be the tip of the iceberg for the valuable content that you could find on a streamer, and by having it be a process of licensing content for that space, it basically becomes a revenue stream and an audience stream, and you can build an endearing audience perspective by not being a soulless corporation that only cares about money, but actually respecting and understanding what fans care about with the process, all at the same time making more money than they're spending in the process. So that to me is the future. Probably not 2021, but you ask what I see on the horizon in related to YouTube. That's my go-to answer.
Well, I mean, good luck finding a soulless company that's not just focused on profits. But I think that'll come from a creator more than a media company. The funny part is that there's so many layers of what you're talking about that I've sort of like seen pieces of. Right? It's channels that want UGC content people to submit UGC content. And I don't know how many clients that have their big YouTube channel and they're like, oh, fans will make content for us, and I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. And and then at the same time, what you're talking about reminds me a little bit of the world of linear TV, of just like, oh, we're just going to buy we're going to create a home renovation channel. We're just going to go buy a bunch of different shows across different producers, put it into one channel, and then we'll own that vertical type of situation, right? So, but this is much more in a social level, IP level type of situation that, I think is very YouTube-y. Again, finding the perfect IP for that, there's not a lot of them, but I do agree that it's just waiting in the wings to happen. So it's a good one. It's a good one. Kudos on that one.
Warner Brothers just did a thing with Rooster Teeth where they're producing like a completely like YouTube generated, essentially like a podcast show with YouTube talent, but on Warner Brothers proper YouTube channel. So it's that same sort of thing where it's like the bleeding edge, and just like the little bow on top of it is, it's not about finding the soulless corporation that doesn't want to make money. It's about the messaging and the value that you present as a corporation to not look soulless and just out for the money when you're providing that. Yeah. Because the reality is the only reason this will work is it will make more money for the corporation. It's like the streaming wars is the most important thing in media right now. And whether it's HBO Max, Peacock, whatever Discovery's, Warner Media's thing is, if that's HBO Max or something new, Disney Plus, all of the above, one of them is going to figure this out first, and then they're going to be a true differentiator amongst the other streamers, which is going to bring audiences to the streamer, which at the end of the day, that's what keeps executives in their seats for years and years to come. And so to me, that's the linchpin of all of this is, how do you figure that piece out? But But yeah, I mean, we're just pipe dreaming right now, so
Exactly.
I'll put the pipe away and I'll deal with it later when I'm not being interviewed on the podcast.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well, thanks a lot. This was an amazing conversation. You're the perfect podcast guest because, you have a lot to say and a lot of insight in the space. So it was really great to hear all your insights on everything on the landscape. What's the best place for people to find you?
And first of all, I will direct quote you that I am the perfect podcast guest. It'll be on the poster for who I am. Really, my social medias, JWWALLE, Instagram, Twitter. From time to time I'm on there. LinkedIn, just put in my proper name. I'll drop nuggets from time to time over there. And then I am doing more and more stuff on Clubhouse. Because nice. I find that is a fun opportunity. And actually, Little Monster we have a club set up there where every Friday at 3:00 Pacific time, we either do like an office hours, a panel conversation, or just a general two people talking, not too dissimilar from this, but in a live Clubhouse environment where people can come in and answer questions, and it's of its moment and not recorded, so people can be more a little more loosey goosey. And I think the last Friday was the evidence of that. We did a YouTube hot takes office hours where we just talked about people's favorite YouTube hot takes and had them sort of defend them against people with curious looks on their eyes, I'm sure. Not that we would know because it's an audio thing. But, so those would be the best places. And, Little Monster Media is on all of the traditional social services. We've got a really fantastic team working on creating content in there that'll be both news and informational. So if you care about the platform, if you want to be in the know, we'll discuss topics and stuff like that. But then there's also our YouTube channel where, we just talk about different specific topics. And one of the real big key ethoses of that me and Matt share, and really is kind of in the whole Little Monster experience, is that there's no such thing as proprietary information in our world. It's that the more that we can share, the more that we know and we learn, and we can give that knowledge to as many people as possible, the better the industry is, and the more we can focus on pushing the boundaries, experimenting, and finding new and better ways to do stuff. So you'll never find on any of our socials or in any of the things that we do is a sort of like a buy my book. Here, I'm going to give you one thing and 3 more things are locked behind this paywall. Our perspective is let's get everyone good and excited about it. We'll obviously protect proprietary information from clients, and we're not going to just go and share their data with the world. But we will, if we learn something, if it's a part of how we do something, we're going to talk about it. We're going to share it with as many people that are willing to listen, because that's how we believe that the whole industry gets better. Is if we continually share and learn knowledge, because we learn from people too, and so we want to always be paying it forward.
Perfect. Yes, Little Monster's social channels have been very valuable over the years. So definitely put all those links in the show notes when this goes live. Thank you very much, Wally, for being on the show. Giving us all your insights. Have yourselves a great summer. Obviously.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Carlos. This was a blast.
Once again, thank you very much to Jonathan for coming on the show. That was a hell of a lot of information. I was taking notes because, Jonathan just said things that, knock around in my brain that I can't spit out sometimes. And it all made sense. One of the things that you might be wondering is what's happening with the show? To be honest, Tom and I are just busy. We got a lot of clients to juggle and mandates, and the podcast thing sort of felt a little bit okay, what are we going to talk about other than news about YouTube all the time? So we decided to just, make a podcast episode when we feel like it. Obviously, we're not, I'm not looking to be a podcast superstar here. So I just want to give information and insights on the stuff we do behind the scenes. So for the time being, it's not going to be a very regular schedule. We're going to pop in once in a while. I'm hoping we can bring it back to at least once a month, but we'll see how that goes. But if you enjoyed the show, we are seeing a consistent amount of downloads, which is pretty impressive. I guess the content's still valuable. So thank you very much to everybody the new people who are listening. Hopefully we'll see you on the next one.